Trey, you need to pair them with a pass first point guard and a big that's versatile, a big that can hit an open shot, can defend the rim, and is also like competent and has a good feel for the game. I don't know who
Yeah.
that is. I mean, we should
It,
probably think about who that is, but
it's Al Horford 10 years ago. That's what that
basically,
is.
yeah, that guy. Yeah, they need that guy. They need to get Marty McFly and get a time machine to get Al Horford back to what he was. But yeah,
Let me put you on game.
of course. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's keep it Eastern Conference, man. Let's go and talk about the we talked about the Atlanta Hawks as a highly dysfunctional, disappointing team, but let's talk about the other highly disappointing, dysfunctional team in the Boston Celtics.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to see. I think that at the beginning of the season, when we talked about that kind of bunch in the middle of the Eastern Conference, when we talked about teams 1 through 8 that we were projecting, we talked about Boston, we talked about Miami, we talked about the Knicks, Toronto, and Atlanta as kind of those teams that were going to be fighting in that second tier of the Eastern Conference. And some of those teams have succeeded and some of those teams haven't. But yeah, Boston has been very uneven this year, which has led a lot of people to debate whether or not they should break up their two young stars in Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum. Of course, those two guys are singularly talented. They are amazing at what they do. They are two of arguably the top 25 players in the NBA, but their greatness individually has not led to team success. So, what do you think about that notion? The idea that they should pursue either trading Jaylen or Jayson, most likely Jaylen in this scenario. But what do you think about the idea of breaking them up?
I think it's silly, man. I think when it comes to the NBA, you collect talent and you just do your best to make it work. I think that I think just offensively, they need to figure out a way to reorganize how they set themselves up. There's a lot of possessions where it's like Jaylen Brown versus, or Jaylen Brown does something with the ball, then Tatum does something with the ball, and the other guy just kind of sitting and watching. Maybe they need to bring in some, triangle offensive concepts where every both of those guys are a threat on every play, and you get a point guard that can actually organize the offense correctly, as opposed to kind of a score first point guard in a Dennis Schroeder or a defensive minded point guard in Marcus Smart. I think that if they can get those two things settled along with a rim protector, it would really bolster their roster in a much better way. And I just don't think that trading away two elite with trading away either or of one of these elite guys on the wings would be beneficial long term. It might get them to be more competitive this year, but I just don't know if that's a long term solution unless you're going to get someone who's of equal value. So for argument's sake, if they trade for like a Ben Simmons, a Jaylen Brown for Ben Simmons straight up or something similar like that, that might actually work out for them, since Ben Simmons could take a lot of playmaking responsibilities away from Jayson Tatum, and Jayson Tatum can only have to worry about scoring and stuff like that. That would make sense. But anything else, getting like pieces, like pieces of what Jaylen Brown and or what Jayson Tatum stand for, I don't know if it would make sense. They just gotta get a coach that can get these guys to buy in, and players in an offensive system that will be conducive to both of them being on the floor at the same time. Because to me, it doesn't make sense to have guys who are this talented that can't play together. You got to get them to work together.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in Boston right now. I mean,
Yeah.
to say the least. First off, Ime Udoka, first year coach, leading all coaches this year in terms of calling out his players for various reasons unnecessarily. Uh, it just almost seems like he's deflecting blame in order to keep the heat off of himself in a way, because I correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't really seen too much of him taking ownership for their struggles.
Nope.
Like, of course, let my fandom peek out for a second. Uh, Billy Donovan, after the last two losses against the Nets and the Warriors, one of the things he said was, of course, the Bulls need to provide more effort, but he said, I need to coach better. And that's kind of the self-awareness that you need in this profession. I don't think really Udoka has displayed that.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of problems with the Celtics, and I think he might be one of them. I think Celtics fans have talked about it all season. I think his rotations can be lackluster. Uh, if you want to look at Brad Stevens, I think the roster itself is ill constructed. Like you said, they really need a point guard that's not primarily a scorer, but that's all they've had for the last half decade. Whether you want to look at Dennis Schroeder, Kemba Walker, Kyrie Irving, Isaiah Thomas, like they've just lined up all of these guys who score but don't necessarily offer much in other areas. Of course, you have IT, who was a really great player at that time. He didn't need to do too much else. And then you had Kyrie, who's one of the most talented NBA players in history, but like he's a scorer. He's a two in a point guard's body, essentially, according to the traditional definitions of positions. But yeah, they need a guy that's more proficient at setting them up. Like maybe if they would have been in the running for a guy like Lonzo Ball, who's not a traditional point guard in that sense, but he's a lot more of a willing passer that they need at that position, just a knockdown shooter. So maybe they probably need a guy that's better at creating off the bounce than Lonzo. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know where that solution comes from. But like to get back to the original prompt, I'm with you on that. I don't think they need to trade either guy. Like you're not going to get the equivalent in a trade back. Ben Simmons is not the equivalent. The Sixers need to throw something else in if you're going to talk about trading Ben Simmons for Jaylen Brown. You know what I'm saying? Because Ben Simmons hasn't really shown that he can perform on that level when you need him to perform. Like he's supposed to be like a 20 and 10 and 10 guy, you know, at some point in his career, but he hasn't shown that he can be the 20 part. You know, like he hasn't really shown that he can score on that level, which is what you need from him in pockets where Jayson Tatum doesn't have it going. But yeah, they're 23 and 25 respectively. I don't think you need to trade either one of those guys. You need to trade them you need to pair them with a pass first point guard and a big that's versatile, a big that can hit an open shot, can defend the rim, and is also like competent and has a good feel for the game. I don't know who that is. I mean, we should probably think about who that is.
It's Al Horford 10 years ago.
That's basically, yeah, that guy. Yeah, they need that guy. They need to get, you know, Marty McFly and get a time machine to get Al Horford back to what he was. But yeah, they need to be put in positions to succeed. Like you can't keep throwing these dudes out and hoping that their seventh isolation possession in a row is going to work this time. Like it's not conducive to success. I think Jayson Tatum has the potential to be a top 5 player in the NBA. I think Jaylen Brown has the potential to be, I don't know, probably top 10. So it's hard. You don't have those guys around the league often. Like you don't really come across them that often. So the fact that you have 2 of them on your roster and you drafted both of them, like that shows you what your ability to scout talent and your ability to keep talent. So as you keep that talent.
Yeah. And I've been listening to The Ringer a lot lately, and their guys have just been clamoring about, like you said, this lack of accountability that comes from within the locker room, and how you saw both sides of it. You saw Brad Stevens, who was a good coach by all of our, understanding, but just really couldn't get those guys motivated. And was a put the blame on myself kind of guy. And now the pendulum has swung the opposite way. And this head coach is like, oh no, this is messing up. Like you get your crap together. I'm good. I'm a first year head coach, but y'all need to get your act, straight. And how that's still ringing hollow. Apparently Jayson Tatum is not really a vocal leader kind of guy. I think Jaylen Brown is a bit more, but at the end of the day, it's about the offensive concepts. I look at a team like Golden State, and you realize that they're so successful because they've created an offensive system that can work whether or not Curry is on the floor, whether or not Draymond is on the floor. There's somebody that picks up the concepts in general. But when you have Curry playing at a high level, when you have Draymond playing at a high level, they become unbeatable or close to it. You need that similar type of offensive system in a team like the Celtics or a team like the Knicks, who struggle at times with their offensive rhythm and flow, and don't necessarily make the most of the talent that they have on the floor. So these types of teams that are kind of struggling right now, they're struggling for a reason. They're struggling because their offense becomes stagnant, stale, and predictable at times, and they just need more flow and rhythm. So hopefully they can get it together.
Yeah, and they're gonna lose Jayson Tatum if they don't stop playing around. Because you see this man in interviews always talking about, man, like, back in the day when we went to the Eastern Conference Finals, man, like when I was young, I just took it for granted, bro. Like it's tough right now. Like that man's 23. he's talking, he's talking like his reciprocal age. He's talking like he's 32 and he's reminiscing on back when he was 23s. Saying like I reminisce and I long for the days when we were Eastern Conference contenders, and he's really not that long into his career. So like they have to figure out a way to get more around them in order to make this work. Because Brad Stevens has always been touted as one of the best basketball minds in the NBA as a coach, and you kind of hope that extends to his ability as a general manager. So we'll have to see what happens with the Celtics, but I don't know. It looks a little dicey this year. It doesn't look like they're going to be any threat at all in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So we'll see. But yeah, Sudgy and Jared, it's a thumbs down for the trade or separate Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum officially. Put you on game, thumbs down. First of its kind.